Hey, Jennifer Walden here for soundeffect.com. This special interview with award-winning supervising sound editor, sound designer, re-recording mixer Johnnie Burn is for AirCon, an online conference about sound for film, games, and beyond, featuring 50 plus talks, AMA panels, and interviews. So AirCon takes place June 5th through June 16th, 2023 at airwiggles.com/aircon. And good news, the conference is completely free and open to everyone around the globe. AirCon is a partnership between Airwiggles and A Sound Effect. Hi, Johnnie. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Jennifer, and hi, Egon. Thank you so much for having me.
So my first introduction to your work was on Yorgos Lanthimos' film The Lobster, and I have been a huge fan of your sound work and Yorgos's films ever since. His films are just so wonderfully quirky. So what's it like to collaborate with this director? Like, what are his tastes in sound, and how are you able to complement his storytelling through your sound work?
Good question. I think yeah, Yorgos is a kind of dream collaborator because the main thing he wants to know is that you understand his style of filmmaking and the film that we're making. And I think I've seen it with all of his heads of department, and he'll show you a cut or whatever, and he's like, "Do you get it?" And if you get it, and then you're free to do his work. I mean, he's a prolific guy, so he probably has another film to write or something. But what he wants to know is that you're going to set about advancing his film with obviously with his style intact. So all the conversation that I've ever had with Yorgos about scenes in his film and how the sound will work is never theory. It's always purely me trying something and demonstrating it to him as a realization and playing him it. And he'll be like, less of the big ideas or kind of, or that's great. But in general, what he wants to do is know that you understand him, and then you're kind of free to move on. And it was funny actually, when I met Yorgos, he came to see me because he'd seen a film I did, Under the Skin, and that was with director Jonathan Glazer, who actually really likes to get under the bonnet, and he's no stranger to a timeline, and he would be well aware through the kind of, well, we spent about a year together placing every like stone on the timeline. So Jonathan Glazer is like a, let's do this together and workshop it. And when I met Yorgos, I was kind of assuming that would be the same thing, and he was like, you're the sound designer, what are you telling me for? You do the sound design and just show me when you've done it. And I was like, okay. So The Lobster was a lot of me sort of, how about this? And he's like, yeah, don't worry, you understand it. And then by the time we got to The Killing of a Sacred Deer, he was actually shooting The Favorite at that point. So I kind of played him pretty much the final mix, and that was the first time he heard it. And he was in the middle of the shooting The Favorite at the time, so it sort of went over his head a bit because he was so elsewhere anyway. But yeah, he's in answer to your question, sorry, long-windedly, he's a dream collaborator because he lets you, he hires you because he believes in you, and he lets you get on with doing a job.
Wow, that's really fantastic. He was so hands off with the killing of sacred deer. Like, all right, Johnny, just go and do your thing. See you on the other
Yeah,
side.
in fact, the first time he really heard the mix was at the premiere at Cannes Film Festival.
Oh my
And
God.
we were in the bar at the after party, and I was like, "So, what did you think of the mix?" And he said, "Yeah." "Did you like it?" He's like, "No, really, but we can change it." I was like, "Okay," but the reality was he did really like it. There was like three things that needed to change, but yeah,
Right,
anyway,
right. So
he's great.
that's not so bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's coming out with a new film this fall. I'm so excited about this, called Poor Things.
Mhm.
I know you can't probably like talk too much about it, but from the trailer, it looks like an interesting kind of sci-fi aspect happening, almost like his take on Frankenstein. So what can we expect in terms of sound? Like, if you had to pick three adjectives to describe the sound on Poor Things, what would they be?
So yeah, I mean, Poor Things. The book is it's an adaptation of a book, and it's and the book is a Frankenstein tale or a version of it, and that's a commonly known thing. And obviously, how Lanthimos chooses to take that is obviously still under wraps. But how would I describe the sound? I think disturbing, minimal, and unreasonable would probably be three three pretty good ways to describe the sound. It is an extraordinary film, and obviously I shouldn't be talking about it much, but but Yorgos is an incredibly stylish guy, and the way he likes me to approach the sound with my team is that keep it minimal, and always have a check with yourself, and if there's three sounds in a scene that are trying to do the same thing, then let's remove two of them. And it's very much about the form of the thing, and and how it works stylistically. And yes, it definitely does have a sci-fi edge to it. And yeah, there's loads of scenes replaying in my head right now that I wish I could talk about, but yeah, it's an extraordinary film. Yeah,
We will totally talk about all of them later with permission from the studio, of course.
absolutely. Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
had a huge hit this past summer working on Jordan Peele's Nope. So I love that you had the opportunity to show up to the set and capture sounds in that space. I think that's just amazing. So is this something that you try to do on all of the films that you work on?
Well, so my introduction to filmmaking was Jonathan Glazer's Under the Skin, and with him, it was all about the rigor of, this must be the accurate sound from Glasgow, from that forest, from that nightclub, and everything. And I just thought that was how everyone did it. So when I said to Jordan, like, obviously I'm going to come to the set, he was like, yeah, sure, dope, let's do that. That's if that's the way you want to do it. So yeah, for me, it is really important to visit the set, and you have the conversations with all the people who hang around on set, and all that spare time that people seem to have while scenes are set up. But so you do actually garner a lot more about what you're trying to make. But more importantly, to what you're asking, I think there's two real key things that happen when I go and visit a set. One, I get all the kind of Foley type sounds, footsteps in the right space, understand, can do an impulse response, can record, all the things that I know that I'll need to give the scene its own authentic shape. But the other thing is, you always get something that you didn't know you were going to get, and that can become quite a keystone of what you kind of end up putting in the film, because it's so hard to sit in front of a screen like this and think, and type in unexpected sound effects into a library. It doesn't exist. So to go and visit a set, and to kick a chair, twang a fence, be surprised that the different soundscape a place may have at night to what your expectations were. When I went to the set of Nope and recorded sounds, I had a microphone running in the house downstairs, and then I went upstairs with a separate mic and started throwing the furniture around, because I wanted to have the sound of the when the rain cloud, when Jean Jacket comes over the house and regurgitates. So I wanted to throw furniture around a bit inside that house to get the acoustic of that house. But it was the microphone that I left downstairs recording that was actually the far more interesting ambient take on that. And I would never have set about to edit into place the sound from Foley recordings that was that, had I not gone and sort of experimented. But yeah, really, I think the most interesting thing you can do in visiting a film set is go and record things that you didn't expect to get, basically, and that will give you the crucial unique flavor where people, hopefully particularly your peers, will think, oh right, that's pretty cool. How do they do that? So yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
Awesome. And how do you prepare for capturing sounds on location? Like, is there any tips that you can share to like make the most of these recording trips?
I always make the most by I mean, it's hard in California, but I'll always pack thermals, because I'm like, this is, you could be outside for like a day, and and people aren't generally used to being outside. I mean, obviously people who work on film sets are, but it's a different thing. I think the Sony WHX series headphones that have the noise reduction, they're not by no means perfect in terms of studio reproduction, but being able to have such a almost near zero noise floor in any environment, and actually hear what you just recorded, is actually quite a game changer in terms of knowing that you've got it and you can kind of move on. I think and probably I would say a waiver form, because I err on the side of loving to avoiding group ADR if I can, and I'll go to, you know, a crowded street and record people conversing. And if anything rises above the level of verbal and becomes an intimate conversation, then there's a privacy issue. And so having a waiver form where you can turn around to someone and say, hey, I'm really sorry, I just recorded you, but if, you know, would you mind signing this, so because you may star in a Hollywood movie? So, you know, that's quite useful as well, because otherwise you'll 6 months down the line you'll be saying, I wish I could use that, when you can't, you know.
Yeah.
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 So I would say them things. Yeah.
Awesome. So we talked about some of the surprises that you had on Nope. You know, like, oh, hey, setting this mic up downstairs, like, actually gave me
Yeah.
this really awesome sound. So what are some other surprises that you've encountered when recording on location? And also any tips for like overcoming challenging locations?
I think yeah, I mean, going back to the lobster, we you know, I went to, you know, I said to Yorgos, obviously I'll come out for set, and so I went about a week into the production, and you know, and I'd seen the rushes and they were deep in a forest, and I was like, wow, I've got to go and record that. That's amazing. And when I got there, it was about 30 yards of forest wide in between a very wild sea and a busy A road. And so I stood there with my microphone and just, you know, picked up white noise and thought, that's not going to do as a background. So, you know, obviously it was important to me, but the island of Ireland has many other beautiful forests that were not the actual one where the recording took place. What other interesting things I haven't? I think on the Nope film set, I would, because the first day I turned up on set, I was obviously surprised because, you know, jean jacket for many of the scenes in the film is actually you know, produced by a helicopter, you know, and then so bang goes your chance of recording anything, and you know, all day long with that flying around basically. But
Yeah.
so I spent a few days where I came down towards the end of the day, and then I'd be there after the set had cleared, and I'd be there in the evening, and then there was a security guard who was looking after the house that was a kind of a set build in a valley in Santa Clarita, and he said, dude, you should come back, you know, like at sort of 2 a.m. because this place sounds so different, you know. And I did, and there's a recording that forms the opening shot of the film, that is, you know, the house at night, that's after the introductory prelude of Gordy. But yeah, and there's this owl that the security guard had spent about 3 months conversing with. He'd learned how to do kind of owl whistle, and so he called it over, and the owl had a hoot, and that's in the front of the film. And so yeah, I think that's all about just immersing yourself in the environment and understanding that these things change with weather and time of day and everything. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Owl conversations. Nice. I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
Going back to the lobster, yeah, so you recorded that forest. And I remember in the film there was that great scene where they're all dancing together, but they're all wearing like headphones and
Yeah,
like Walkmans and stuff. Yeah. So the sound of them just dancing around in that forest, was that Foley?
it
Or was
was.
that like practical? Like, was that something that you captured?
It
Probably
was
not.
both. So yeah, that the night before I was in the bar in the hotel, because the lobster was set in a hotel in Ireland, and everyone stayed in the hotel as a film crew as well. So the night
Nice.
before that scene was filmed, I was in the bar with Yorgos and Colin Farrell, and Colin asked, what are we going to be dancing to tomorrow for the you know, for the scene with the silent disco? And Yorgos was like, well, we don't have any music. And he was like, but you know, I need a beat. And Yorgos said, Johnny, you know, you're the sound designer, what are they dancing to? And I was like, oh my goodness. So I was dispatched to my hotel room, and I wrote 3 dance tracks of different speeds of tempo. So, you know, Ariane she was doing all that fast stuff, and Colin's one was slow, and Rachel Weisz's one was kind of a medium tempo, but I wanted to separate them like that. And then they were given Walkmans or whatever, you know, and they danced to that. But so they each had a radio mic, and there was a boom mic on each of them. And for the most part, all the kind of clothing movement was very much them, but we added snapping twigs and Foley footstep stuff to go with it. But yeah, that's Yeah, sorry, more than the Foley, you gave me flashback to an awful night in bar in Ireland where Yorgos was like, "What are you doing about this?" And I hadn't thought about it, but yeah, it was predominantly production sound.
That's awesome. That's so great. I love that movie. I really do. I can't wait
Yeah,
to see Poor Things. Like I can't wait to hear what you did with this movie.
yeah, no, it is brilliant. It's yeah, gosh, I don't know what I can say about it, but yeah, it will, yeah, I think it's going to definitely have a fan base. It's a very cool film.
So you started your studio, Wave Studios, with Warren Hamilton in London back in 1999, and it's since grown into a global company, right? You have studios in New York and Amsterdam. So, do you have any advice to share on building a successful sound studio?
Well, I can try. I think it's all about the people. I think it's about that's very much about finding individuals who share the passion that you do, and to whom you can say, you're now in charge of this, and I trust you completely, and make it grow, and let's do this together. I think more so than the plan was never to to globally dominate, or that all entirely came out of wanting to deliver ambitions for people who work at Wave Studios. So Aaron Reynolds, who now runs the New York office, we went to New York because he fancied the idea of it, and he was doing very well, so we wanted to deliver his ambitions basically, and the same for Amsterdam. But I think yeah, it's a people business. Despite all the technology, it's definitely about individuals, and about because the clients who want to work with them are humans. So I've always been pretty clear with everyone who works at my company that their boss is really their client. It's nothing to do with the ownership of the company. It's to do with them keeping the people that they work with and do for whom they do sound. That's the person they want to keep happy and form the relationship with, basically. And so it's about nurturing those guys and giving them the space to do their work. I think that's how it happened. It's all a bit of a blur
So because you have, studios in New York and Amsterdam, like remote collaboration was just kind of built
though.
into your workflow, before COVID made it like more widely accepted way to work. So now that more sound designers are choosing to work remotely, you've already been working this way. So what impact has that had on you and your business?
I think yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's definitely changed, and everything has. um Studio usage of the physical space is definitely down. People do not need a big expensive room in a city center anymore. But then on the upside of that, there's a lot more work to do, um and the answer is to support the individual again in the way that they want to work. I think you know times definitely have changed, and I think it I work from home a lot. It's so easy. I did the first 5 months of Nope. I worked from the UK, and I would do a kind of daily meeting with Jordan, for an hour or two, and it was just like this. And I'd be playing him stuff, and he had a 5-1 listening room that was exactly the same as my room. My team set it up over there, and it was great. It's better than having to go somewhere and meet someone, because the minute you finish, you're both still, you're both back in your own home, basically. There's no, so obviously I'm stating the obvious, but yeah, the um COVID workflows for me are brilliant, because it just means you can get so much more done with so much less wasted time. And for the business, it's a difficult one, because people need to use studio times less, but then the solution is do more work, basically, in general.
And so for your sound designers, do you help them set up their spaces at home, or do you recommend, certain gear or sound panels or a way to treat their spaces so they're like more acoustically sound?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we had a fair old bit of capital outlay in the last couple of years, because it's a big cost that I think should be absorbed by the company. But yeah, for the most part, everyone used to have a studio in town, the designers, and whichever town they live in, and now they have one in town and one in their home. And I think, the really important things are get a 5.1 set up as basic, get a soundproof door, because that makes an enormous difference to how it works. Get bare minimum, get bass traps at the front of your room wherever you are, because that cloudiness of the low ends really will mess up your work. But yeah, it's I thoroughly encourage, I want my staff to be happy and everything, and it's just so much easier to work that way. Because it's not great for companies, but because I find it so fantastically useful myself, I can't put it any other way. Basically, it's definitely the way forward.
Right, like you get to wake up and go to work in your pajamas, so why shouldn't your employees have the same benefit?
Well, yeah, I mean, I live by the sea. I mean, it's the English sea, so it's cold, but I can still go paddleboarding and then do a bunch of work after that. So it's and that time I would normally be spending on a train. So it's
yeah. Spending time on a paddleboard is way better than spending time on a train.
On the way to work. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a heck of a commute.
It's a tough one. Yeah.
So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Johnny, for being here and taking part in Aircon. I really appreciate you sharing your time and your story with me.
Thank you so much, Jen.